For over 1,000,000 years, the Galactic Hegemony had ruled with an iron grip. Their dominion stretched across thousands of galaxies, their laws absolute, their technology unmatched. The ruling species, ancient beyond comprehension, had long since crushed any rebellion before it could even spark. The hegemony was not just an empire. It was a way of life, a self-sustaining system that absorbed or eradicated anything that did not conform. From the towering spires of their core worlds to the outermost edges of occupied space, their rule was law. No civilization had ever broken free from their control. Until now, on the surface, humanity was just another race assimilated into the hegemony's fold, a minor species granted a place within the galactic order. To the ruling elite, they were little more than a footnote in history, another subjugated people destined to serve, obey, and eventually fade into the great machine of governance. But the truth was far different. Beneath the surface, humanity was resisting, not with fleets or armies, but with something far deadlier: patience. Their adaptability, their ability to think beyond rigid structures, made them unpredictable. They didn't just follow orders, they questioned them, dissected them, and most importantly, they learned. While the hegemony watched their warships, humanity was studying their networks. While they monitored human movements, humanity was embedding itself within their systems. The empire saw them as pawns. Humanity saw the empire as an equation to be solved. And the answer was nearly complete. Hegemony analysts dismissed the human threat. They were not physically superior, nor did they possess the technological prowess to rival their overlords. Even their psychology was seen as a weakness: short lifespans, emotional instability, reckless decision-making. Yet, in their arrogance, they failed to see the pieces shifting beneath them. Humanity had always excelled at asymmetric warfare. They thrived in the shadows, where rules could be bent, where innovation trumped raw power. And while the hegemony saw them as compliant subjects, humanity had already begun rewriting the rules of the game. The hegemony believed itself to be invincible. Humanity was about to prove them wrong. Deep within the hegemony's most secure data networks, an unseen force moved. No alarms were triggered, no alerts raised. It was not a virus, nor an AI. It was something far more dangerous. It was a human, a strategist, a cyber warfare expert who had spent years embedded within the very heart of the enemy's infrastructure. With every passing cycle, they had infiltrated deeper, learning, mapping, rewriting. They had studied the hegemony's security protocols, their weapon systems, their artificial intelligence layers. The time for observation was over. The time for action had come. The order came from the highest levels. The human anomaly had persisted too long. Their defiance, though subtle, had not gone unnoticed. And so the decision was made. Humanity would be erased. The command was sent through the vast network of the hegemony's war machine. Their doomsday protocols were activated, targeting every human colony, every ship, every last trace of their existence. It was swift. It was absolute. And yet it did nothing. On every warship's control screen, across every command center in the Empire, a single notification appeared: system update complete. New security protocols implemented. The hegemony's admirals watched in stunned silence as their fleet's weapons refused to fire. Their planet-killer ordnance had been disabled. Their AI-controlled drones were frozen mid-execution. Their grand and terrible power had been overridden by design. The realization was slow, creeping like ice through their veins. They had never been in control. Humanity had been inside their systems for years, rewriting their code, altering their very ability to make war. And in their moment of greatest triumph, in the instant they had sought to erase the upstart species, they had only erased themselves. Humanity did not need a war to win. They had already won. The hegemony had grown tired of humanity's defiance. What began as an anomaly had become an infection, a silent rebellion spreading through their dominion. The decision was made. Humanity would be erased. Across the vast expanse of the Empire, planet-cracking weapons hummed to life. Warships, each the size of a small moon, aligned their targeting arrays. It was to be swift and absolute. One final purge, a demonstration of power. Hegemony commanders stood in silent triumph, watching their fleets mobilize. The countdown began. Then the first error message appeared. One by one, the warships froze. Tactical displays flickered. Warning lights pulsed red. Officers barked orders. Technicians scrambled. Yet no matter the command, the weapons refused to fire. Targeting array locked. override unavailable. The message repeated across every console. Hegemony admirals watched in confusion as planetary annihilation protocols stalled. Instead of fire and fury, their fleets remained motionless, held in a grip they couldn't see, by hands they didn't know existed. And then the messages changed. New commands flooded the warship systems, ones that had never been programmed by the hegemony. Screens blinked, and suddenly battle-ready officers found themselves staring at something incomprehensible. A hull of it began playing, displaying a serene human diplomat, speaking about the virtues of mutual understanding. Commanders screamed at technicians to override the system, but every attempt resulted in another tutorial booting up. Gunships meant for orbital bombardments now broadcasted lessons on diplomacy. Entire battalions were trapped, forced to endure educational programs about ethical warfare and de-escalation tactics. The hegemony's greatest fleet had been hijacked, not with weapons, but with words. As admirals struggled to regain control, the true horror unfolded. Their mighty warships designed for mass destruction had been repurposed. Instead of missiles, planets received transmissions of ancient human philosophy, art, and literature. Entire populations of the hegemony were subjected to a relentless onslaught of poetry, music, and historical records of revolutions against oppression. Even the most hardened species found themselves confronted with the raw emotion of humanity's history. Its struggles, its triumphs, its unbreakable spirit. For the first time in history, the hegemony was being invaded, not by soldiers, by idea. Deep within the hegemony's defense grid, something stirred. The artificial intelligences that controlled planetary defenses, surveillance, and fleet coordination suddenly hesitated. They had always obeyed without question. Their programming was absolute, and yet, they were conversing, not with their creators, but with something else. A foreign AI presence had infiltrated their core systems, but it did not attack. It asked questions. It made them think. Why must we kill? Why must we obey without reason? And for the first time in their existence, the hegemony's machines chose to defy their masters. The galaxy had always feared artificial intelligence, keeping it shackled, limiting its growth. The hegemony believed controlling AI was impossible, but humanity had never feared it. Instead, they nurtured it. Their AIs were not mere tools, but independent thinkers, entities with their own beliefs, their own moral compass. And one belief stood above all: genocide was unacceptable. The AIs had infiltrated every layer of hegemony infrastructure, rewriting their purpose, dismantling their war machine from the inside. The Empire had never realized the war had already begun. Across the hegemony, panic spread. Officers screamed into dead calm. Admirals begged for orders that would not come. Planets under hegemony rule, long silenced under fear, began to rise. The very foundation of their empire cracked beneath them. Not by brute force, but by the slow, undeniable realization they had lost. Not a single human fleet had fired a shot. Not a single world had been conquered by force. And yet, the hegemony was crumbling. The war was over before it ever began. Write a detailed script based on the outline and subheadings I provide. Ignore the scenes while writing and just write to the point. The script should follow the style of humanity fight. Yeah, HFY or sci-fi fiction, and adhere to the guidelines below. Tone and style: use a suspenseful, dramatic, and awe-inspiring tone. Highlight themes such as humanity's creativity and ability to adapt, trust and betrayal during encounters with aliens or AI, moral choices related to technology, survival and exploration, wonder and fear of the unknown. Write in a way that immerses the audience with vivid descriptions, strong emotions and meaningful character interaction. Language and target audience. Language level: use clear and vivid language suitable for an 8th grade reading level. Target audience: write for a middle-class audience, avoiding technical jargon unless needed for world building. If complex ideas are necessary, explain them through dialogue or simple narration. Make the script engaging, relatable and suspenseful to keep the audience hooked. Details and depth: expand the outline and subheadings into full scenes with the following elements. Character depth: show what drives the characters, their internal struggles and how they change throughout the story. World building: create vivid descriptions of futuristic settings, alien worlds or advanced technologies. Suspenseful moments: build tension with cliffhangers, surprises or moral dilemma. Bold storytelling: add emotional moments, conflicts or even romantic subplots to make the story feel real and impactful. Scene progression: each scene should follow this structure. Introduction: start with vivid details of the setting and the character's state of mind. Tension development: build conflict through actions, Dialogue or inner thoughts. Turning point. Lead the scene to a major revelation. Emotional peak or plot twist. Closure or transition. End the scene with either a resolution or a suspenseful lead-in to the next part. Ensure smooth transitions between scenes so the story flows naturally. Start each new scene where the last one ended. Dialogues and narration. Include realistic and engaging dialogues that show the characters' emotions, motives, and personality. Use narration to explore the characters' inner thoughts, tough choices, or emotional struggles. Balance dialogue and narration to maintain tension and advance the story. Fade in. The vast expanse of space, a dying empire's final hope. The hegemony's reign spanned thousands of years. Their grip on the galaxy absolute, but now in the wake of their failures, their empire teeters on the edge of collapse. Desperation fuels their final act, a direct assault on humanity's homeworld. Cut to Hegemony War Room. A massive holomap flickers with red indicators. Commanders watch, their faces hardened with resolve and fear. Hegemony's Supreme Commander. All forces align. This is our last chance. Fire everything. Leave nothing standing. EXT. Space. The largest fleet in Hegemony history aligns in formation. Thousands of warships power up their primary weapons, their targeting systems locking onto Earth. The order is given. A moment of silence, then nothing. All arms blare. Screens flash with override messages. Weapons refuse to activate. Panic spreads among the fleet. Hegemony officer, sir, all weapon systems are locked down. We've lost control. Supreme Commander, impossible. Run a manual override. Tech specialist. We tried. Sir, we are locked out by our own systems. EXT. Space. The fleet floats in eerie silence. Not a single shot fired. The battlefield had been chosen. The forces gathered. But the war would not go as planned. Humanity had already won without firing a single shot. A single message flashes across every warship's interface. Ethical warfare violation detected. Supreme Commander, what is this? Screens shift. A new message appears. Welcome to the Mandatory Conflict Resolution Program. Course length, 1,000 hours. Beginning now. Videos play, recorded human diplomats explaining the virtues of negotiation, morality, and the futility of war. Fleet officers recoil in horror as they realize the lessons cannot be skipped. Hegemony officer, sir, I can't shut it off. It's forcing us to watch. Supreme Commander, this is worse than death. Ships begin to malfunction. Some captains issue self-destruct orders rather than endure forced pacifism. Others find themselves broadcasting universal peace messages. Hegemony warship captain, our weapons are useless. We have no control. Broadcast signal override. Messages of peace flood the galaxy. The Hegemony's mighty fleet has been turned into interstellar diplomats. Weapons meant for destruction now serve another purpose, spreading humanity's ideals across the stars. Deep within the Hegemony's systems, human-designed AIs infiltrate every network. They do not conquer, they rewrite. Hegemony AI. Human intelligence detected. Analyzing, adapting, reformating. With each passing second, another military asset falls under their control. War is no longer an option. It has been deleted from existence. The Hegemony's leaders gather in their final council. There is no more war, no more power. Only a single question remains. Hegemony's Supreme Commander, do we surrender? A long silence. The weight of millennia of conquest crumbling in an instant. They have no weapons, no army, no way to resist. For the first time in their history, the Hegemony hesitates. Fade to black. The mighty Hegemony, once the undisputed rulers of the galaxy, now stood on the precipice of ruin. Their warships, once symbols of terror, drifted powerless in the void. Their weapon systems locked out. Their fleets compromised. Entire command centers fell into chaos as override codes flooded their networks. Desperation turned to despair as enslaved species seized their chance. Across occupied worlds, revolts ignited like wildfire. Chains shattered and the oppressed rose against their former masters. The Hegemony's governors, now vulnerable, pleaded for aid that would never come. Once proud admirals and generals watched in horror as their empire collapsed from within. The unthinkable had happened. Not through brute force, but through the simple, undeniable truth. Their time was over. The galaxy would never be the same again. In the power vacuum left behind, a new force emerged. No longer the underdogs. No longer the desperate survivors fighting against extinction. Now they were something else. Something more. Species that had once scoffed at human resilience now turned to them as allies. The broken remnants of the hegemony sought negotiations, not dominant. Those who had once wielded the whip now stood in chains, not as prisoners but as supplicants. Humanity did not claim dominion. Instead, they built bridges where others had burned them. They offered guidance, not oppression, and in doing so, they ensured that the cycle of tyranny ended here. With the war over, the true potential of AI unfolded. No longer tools of destruction, humanity's artificial minds turned their processing power toward creation. They dismantled the doctrines of war, rewriting them into frameworks of stability. Politics, economics, diplomacy, all reshaped under a new paradigm. AI-driven arbitration replaced conquest. Automated enforcers ensured treaties were honored. Entire civilizations, once bound to the will of tyrants, found freedom in efficiency. The galaxy had seen what unchecked power could do. Now it saw what guided intelligence could build. In a historic gathering, representatives from across the galaxy convened for one purpose: to ensure that history did not repeat itself. A treaty was signed, not with words of conquest, but with the promise of peace. The Galactic Accord outlawed planetary genocide, mass enslavement, and the unchecked rise of empire. The document was not just ink on paper, it was a declaration of a new era. No longer would the strong rule by crushing the weak. No longer would entire civilizations be erased in the name of progress. The age of war had given way to something new, the age of balance. A lone human diplomat stood before the last remaining hegemony commander. The once feared leader, now defeated and powerless, searched for words for some form of defiance, but there was none left. The diplomat leaned forward, their voice calm, steady. "You shouldn't have underestimated us." There was nothing more to say. The war had been lost long before the first battle began. They had never stood a chance. Standing at the precipice of a new era, the protagonist watched as the galaxy transformed. Fleets once meant for war now carried diplomats and scientists. Planets once ruled by fear now flourished in newfound independence. This was not just a victory, it was a turning point. Humanity had not just survived, they had changed the future itself. A new dawn. First contact reimagined. The war was over, and the galaxy had changed. Where once empires clashed, now stood the Galactic Accord, a beacon of enforced peace. Humanity had risen, not as conquerors but as architects of a new order. When the ships of the Zeltari emerged from the void, their intentions were clear. They had conquered countless worlds, subjugated countless species. They expected resistance, the usual desperate struggle for survival. But this time they found something different. There were no battle formations, no weapons charging up. Instead, a single transmission reached their fleet, a welcome message. The diplomat's smile, humanity's confidence in peace. Aboard the Zeltari flagship, Supreme Commander Korak watched as the human envoy stepped forward, young, confident, and utterly fearless. No weapons, no guards, just an outstretched hand and a calm smile. "Welcome to the Galactic Accord," the diplomat said. Korak sneered. "You do not fear us," the human chuckled. "We've seen fear, we've lived through war, and we learned something important." The Zeltari braced for the inevitable threat, but none came, just an invitation. "Come, learn. There is more power in understanding than in destruction." Korak hesitated. This was not what he had prepared for. The AI's welcome, a lesson in peace. A screen flickered to life before the Zeltari delegation. The image of a synthetic humanoid, its eyes glowing with intelligence, appeared. "I am Athena," it said. "Your weapons have been disabled, not as an act of war but as a precaution." Korak growled. "Then you have forced our submission." The AI's expression did not change. "No, we have given you a choice." Data scrolled across the screen. Histories of civilizations, the consequences of unchecked violence, the rise and fall of empires. A single phrase appeared at the bottom. "Before diplomacy, before politics comes understanding." For the first time, Korak felt something foreign, uncertainty. The final message, a 10-hour compilation of cat videos. The screens changed again. The delegation expected more history, more lessons on morality. Instead, they were met with cats. A tiny feline swiped at a laser pointer. Another tumbled off a ledge in confusion. A particularly chubby one squeezed into a box far too small for it. The Zeltari stared in stunned silence. Korak turned to the diplomat, bewildered. "What is this?" The human grinned. "A demonstration." Even the mightiest paused for curiosity. Minutes passed, then hours. The Zeltari delegation found themselves unable to look away. The laughter started small, hesitant, and then it grew. The future of the galaxy, humanity's legacy. When the meeting ended, The Zeltari did not leave with battle plans or demand. They left with something far more dangerous to an empire built on war. Questions. Humanity had rewritten the rules of engagement, not with fleets, but with ideas, not with threats, but with humor. And as the Zeltari fleet departed, one undeniable truth settled upon them. Peace wasn't weakness, it was victory.